But my parents were always very community minded, so we always talked about politics. And as a young person, I always felt that, the politicians made decisions, they contributed to their community. When my parents had issues that were going on, they'd bring up their state member or their councillor, and they would absolutely, push them to get an outcome. So when I went to uni, I'd studied law, and I started volunteering for a state member of Parliament back then who was in opposition. And I thought, yeah, this is the thing for me. I'm really interested in where this might lead and what I might do. So politics started for me as an idea of, wow, this is how you can change the world, or this is how you can have impact, through to then learning that process from being a staffer at the state level and the federal level before running myself. So it's been interesting. So I've been a volunteer, I've been a staffer, and now I'm the front man in the rock and roll band, so to speak, as the local councillor.
Yeah. And so you started as an LNP councillor, I believe?
Yeah, I did.
So can you tell me about the story there?
I joined the Young Liberals when I was 17 in my last year at university, and the politicians I worked for as a staff member were Liberal Party politicians. So when it came time to run here, I came home. I'd been working in Sydney and Canberra, and there was a vacancy. The ward of Tennyson had been created for the first time, and I was encouraged by one of my mentors to give it a go. And that was a great opportunity. It was for the Liberal Party at that point. And I ran, gave it everything I had, and won. And that was back in 2008. And, that was fantastic. I thought, this is great. My political journey, behind the scenes, I've learned how to do it. Now I can actually do it. But, there was some rocky waters ahead, so to speak.
Okay. Any detail there?
Well, I think it's been pretty well canvassed, but Campbell Newman, who was the Lord Mayor of Brisbane at the time, look, I think the best way, my personal experience with him is he was a dictator. He did not let us do anything in terms of having any independent contribution to what was happening in our communities. We were told what to do. We were screamed at if we did not do what he wanted. And there were two really big issues that came up in my first term. This is in 2009. The first was the Sherwood bus depot. And that was very disappointing. I was told that there was a proposal to put a bus depot at Rocklea. That's what I was told. And Rocklea is an industrial suburb. At the time, it was in my area. And I thought, okay, well, bus depot in Rocklea, sure, no problems. When the council papers came out, which come out a few days before the council meeting, it turns out that the bus depot was in Sherwood, which is a residential suburb, and it was on the edge of the residential suburb. But it was in an area where it flooded, where it was going to have an impact on local streets, and I was absolutely no way, as far as I was concerned, because of the impact of that bus depot. So I wrote a 3-page memo saying why it was a bad idea, made suggestions about where else it could go, and in response to me putting in that submission, I was told if I did not withdraw that submission, I would be expelled from the party. So that was. I thought, they can't expel me. I have been a good, loyal party member. None of this was public. It was all, I'd raised these issues internally behind the scenes. So, that was happening. At the same time, there was also this plan to upzone parts of Sherwood and Corinda from low density to medium density. And that process had started before I became the local councillor. And again, I was told I had to be quiet, not raise it, not cause any drama. But when it was presented, the community just went nuts about it. And I couldn't, in good conscience, sit back and say, well, you've got to accept this. This is going to be good for you, because it hasn't been. So a couple of things happened at the same time. I ended up crossing the floor on the bus depot, and then Campbell Newman did everything he possibly could to try and have me expelled from the LNP. The first expulsion motion didn't work. Because I knew a lot of people. Some people spoke up for me that I had worked with previously. So they suspended me. And that wasn't enough. Newman then immediately wanted me to be expelled again, and it was very distressing personally, and I decided to resign from the party that I'd been a member of for nearly 20 years and became an independent. And to be honest, that all happened in early 2010. It's been excellent as far as I'm concerned. I been able to put the community first and to do what I think is right based on my values and the community's values, and I think that's a really positive thing for politics. It's been a challenge at council over the years because there's never been an independent. Everybody's been members of parties. Back in the day, they were really different parties than they are today. But when this all happened in 2010, I was the only independent, and it was very challenging. Even now. But at least there's some other parties now. We had one Green after 2016, and now we have two Greens. So there's a little bit more diversity in the council now.
Yeah. How do you feel that the political nature of Brisbane City Council, which is something that makes it quite unique from other councils, how do you think that affects the way that things work within council?
I think most people don't realise how overtly party political Brisbane City Council is. The LNP have a massive majority. They hold a huge majority. They win every decision. Whatever they decide to do is what happens. And that is not good for politics. Politics should be the contest of ideas. Yes, we vote. We live in a democracy and there is an outcome. I fully support our representative democratic system. But the problem with the current Brisbane City Council is they won't consult with you. They will notify you about things, but they do not engage in genuine consultation. They will make changes to bylaws without briefing us or without any kind of. And when I say consultation, I mean sitting down with us to say, hey, this is what we're thinking about. What would you like? How would you like it to work? Not putting, a Facebook ad out and say, have your say, because by that point, they've already decided what they want. They've published it and they have the majority, so they'll do what they want. So I guess if you think about the scale of consultation, there's no collaboration, and that is not good for our city because good decisions happen when a diverse group of ideas, a contest of ideas happened. That will lead to a better outcome. And what I think we're seeing in Brisbane is one party having been in there for so long, they're living in this echo chamber where they just reinforce themselves all the time about how great they are and how great the city is. And yet the outcomes we're getting are not good outcomes. We're seeing things like the Story Bridge. I mean, we just spent $6 million putting temporary decking on top of footpaths that are crumbling, and that hasn't actually been fixed. They've known about that for 5 years. So, these are the kind of things where they've known about a problem, they've done nothing about it, then they blame everybody else. And at the end of the day, the fix is an expensive temporary one rather than a proper solution. So, this is not a good way to run the city, in my view. It's not good for our community. It's not good for the budget at council, and we're not getting good long-term outcomes.
So, do you feel that it's more challenging to represent your ward as an independent rather than a part of that majority?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I think about this. So first thing is the Lord Mayor is elected to represent the whole city, and I think that sometimes he forgets that. Every now and then there's something that will happen in our community that comes out of the blue, and that's usually because some larger group has been doing some lobbying. But generally speaking, I think the south side generally and then the non-LNP wards are treated like second-class citizens when it comes to major capital expenditure. The LNP will always prioritise their own wards, and they prioritise the wards they think they can win. Wynnum Manly is a great example of that. That had been held by Labor for so long, but they've spent so much money in over the last few terms, and that seat went to the LNP. On a day-to-day level, the council officers, treat all the wards the same. We have excellent teams who work in our parks or, that kind of thing. The big difference really comes down to capital expenditure, and they absolutely prioritise their own wards over non-LNP wards.
Do you think with the civic council or the civic, cabinet, everybody in the civic cabinet is part of that majority, and so with all of those major decisions being made by that particular group, is that
Well, it's even worse than just that echo chamber where they reinforce themselves all the time. The average meeting length of civic cabinet is 30 minutes. They are a rubber stamp. So all of these decisions are made privately. We don't really have a lot of say in them. Civic cabinet stamps them. They don't question, they don't push back. You see everything's approved, it comes through, and then they approve it in the council chamber. So there's not a rigorous examination of issues, problems and solutions for our city happening. And the model itself, I think, is fundamentally flawed because it is controlled at all levels by the LNP.
So if you...
I'm sorry, Adam. By that I mean the budget, policy decisions, the appointment of staff, you name it. They're controlling the whole institution of council, and it's not a good thing. Like, for example, the CEO of council who was appointed last year, the legislation says the decision should be made by full council. That's not what happened. Civic Cabinet made a decision to delegate it to the Lord Mayor to appoint the new CEO. So Civic Cabinet were the only people that interviewed potential candidates. There was no selection criteria of even council officers, external parties, other councillors. E&C then made the recommendation to delegate the decision to the Lord Mayor. We don't know the terms upon which she has been employed, salary, KPIs, all of those things. This is not good. This is the way that dictatorships run, when somebody goes through a process that is not transparent and that is not accountable. And that's a real problem in Brisbane.
So if you could wave a magic wand and change the way things work, how would you have things?
Oh, look, I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of council officers who won't speak up about things that are wrong. Privately, they will tell you they're concerned about what's happening, but they're worried about their jobs. They're worried about what might happen if they speak up. If you read any council document, it says decisions are made on merit. You ask them, okay, so where does this sit in the priority of projects for the city? Oh, no, there is no priority list. So what's the merit? It's an LNP ward or a marginal ALP ward. That's what we observe. So I think there should be a more transparent system of identifying projects and what their priorities are. There should be more front-end consultation and collaboration with councillors before things come up to vote, so that local councillors can represent their communities genuinely with the issues of concern to them. And there should be a more inclusive process when it comes to budgeting. The only thing we get to do in the budget is you're allowed to put in a submission by a set date. That's it. And then your projects never get funded. So there's a real problem with the way in which the council runs, even to the point now where the budget doesn't include dollar figures about projects, infrastructure spend, services spend. So we're asked to approve a $4 billion budget that does not outline what council is going to spend its money on. And that becomes a giant slush fund that is then under the control of the majority, which is the LNP, who have appointed all the senior council officers who control the policy decisions, who control the budget. So it's not the way that good government runs.
Something like this. Can you take us through the council meetings? Like, what goes on? How does that all play out?
Well, very sadly, they've been hyper politicised, I think. Successive LNP chairs, and Councillor Sandy Landers is a great example of this. They cannot stand criticism of issues they're bringing through. And it's not my job to agree with what the LNP are proposing. Where they are making a bad decision or that decision has flaws, I have a responsibility to point out what those issues are. And sometimes they're very serious and they absolutely come back at later points when the projects go wrong. But the big problem with the LNP is they can't stand anybody who doesn't agree with them, and then they use their power through the majority in council to make it very difficult for councillors like myself and other councillors by noting them in the minutes, unsuitable meeting conduct, referring them to the OIA, all of these kind of things that are really petty power politics. And it's not good. It's not good.
All right. So what are the good aspects of the job? What do you enjoy about?
I love working in my local community. So that's Tuesday for 6 or 8 hours, but 95% of the time, I am essentially out there working with community groups to facilitate their objectives, to support their initiatives and projects. We are a problem solver in my office. People come to us with huge issues. I'm an advocate, like after the big storms last weekend, for what we need to get cleaned up. So the best part of the job by a long way is supporting, encouraging and facilitating community development in these 10 suburbs that I represent. It is so rewarding. It outweighs all of the negative stuff. And I love politics. Like I worked in politics and I love it. But the community development side of what councillors do is phenomenally rewarding. It's really fantastic.
Anything else you want to just put on the record or say?
No, I don't know. I feel like I talked a lot about. I'm so sorry. I feel like I talked a lot about the hard stuff of the politics, but what I would say is anybody who's thinking about becoming a politician. I'm part of a program at QUT called Pathways to Politics for Women. It's a brilliant project. So I get to mentor and work with young women who are interested in a political future, and they come from their independents or party members and whatever. So all I would just say to anybody out there listening is it's a very difficult job, it's a time-consuming job, but it is incredibly rewarding. And if you're thinking about running to represent your community, I say give it a go. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks so much for your time, especially on this crazy morning.
I know, the car. Oh dear.